I'm happy. I can stop running now. I can stop. I can stop. I can stop running. This is good for me. I need to enjoy this. I feel good. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy.
Some things are not what they seem. I had a hard time articulating my experience with Wanderstop, so I'll do the best I can explaining it to you now. Before we get started, I'd like to say that I'm incredibly grateful for Ivy Road for reaching out to me with the preview code of Wanderstop, so I had the chance to play the game early. As far as I'm aware, there is a public release of the demo on February 24th, which is a little bit shorter than the version I received. The game is due to be released on PS5 and PC on the 11th of March and set to be around 15 hours or so. Either way, I urge you to wishlist the game and try the demo out for yourself, because for me, it was a ride. I've played through this version of the game a number of times, and with each playthrough, I'm discovering more than the last. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. Much like a teapot overstuffed with tea leaves, the games industry appears to be oversaturated with cozy games. Which is why, at first glance, Wanderstop may appear to be like any other farming game on the market. Sure, it embodies the typical cliches of a farming game, such as growing crops, endearing aesthetics, and of course that warm and fuzzy feeling you get after playing. Not to mention the adorable pufflins wandering around the shop. Even the starting menu settles the player into a false sense of security in a way, flooding your senses with beautiful music and calming art as the sign for Wanderstop sways in the light breeze. I suppose I should say, though there are cozy vibes to boot, Wanderstop is a whole other beast. Meet ALTA, an overachieving fighter who, after a 3.5-year fighting streak, is finally beaten and searching for her mentor to bring her back to her former glory. The only problem is she collapses in the woods whilst trying to find them and discovers she lacks the strength to carry her sword in the first place. Upon awakening, you find yourself met by Boro, a local entrepreneur and the owner of Wanderstop, a tea shop and resting place for weary travellers. Boro comes off as a kind, gentle giant, only looking to help ALTA as she recovers, even offering her to run the tea shop as she builds up her strength. Now, it was at this point where ALTA truly resonated with me. She's reluctant to accept help, and with numerous attempts to leave, she can't seem to find the strength, and so gives in to help Boro with the tea shop. Now, here at Wanderstop, Boro is adamant that customers don't need to purchase anything. Much like ALTA, they can stay to rest and leave whenever they please. Now, straight off the bat, this made me feel a little unsure about the place, but who am I to judge? It's a cozy game, right? As I mentioned before, on the surface you appear to do every basic mechanic in a farming game, except it's with tea. There's a myriad of tools at your disposal to help you run the shop accordingly. You gather the leaves, you dry those leaves, you sow the seeds, you water the seeds. I could go on and on, but with Wanderstop I quite enjoyed the change in agriculture. Sure, you can sow a basic seed in a single plot, or take advantage of the seed sowing diagrams. Depending on how you place the seeds, you are welcomed with a fruit to water with your adorable froggy watering can, which can result in a different type of plant which is produced. Each plant has a significant life cycle too, which leaves the player to decide whether or not they want to squeeze the plant for everything they're worth, take things slow, or just leave them for decoration. And yes, you can pop them into pots too. Once you've collected all the necessary ingredients, it's time to master the colossal brewing system homed in the centre of the tea room. It looks daunting, elaborate, and overcomplicated, but you quickly get the hang of it. Climbing, pulling ropes, kicking switches, and lobbing various ingredients into the pot soon becomes an art which certainly has room for experimenting. As you forage around the gardens, you'll soon find many ingredients to add. I found a whole bunch of different types of mushrooms which I'm still unsure what to do with, so I just put them back and I expect they'll become more significant in the main game. Either way, I'm sure our trusty guide will tell us as we unlock more secrets and meet more customers. Oh, on that note, during my playthrough I met a couple of new characters. A demon hunter who initially felt like a door-to-door salesman, and of course Gerald, our dad knight wannabe with a very one-sided enthusiasm for his son. I suppose with the full game we're bound to meet more characters, but for the time being, I got to know each character more, rifled through far too many photos, and brewed different types of tea at their request. Now, I suppose it's time to discuss our Woman of the Hour. Without getting too personal, I resonated with ALTA more than I expected. I knew from the trailer that there was some dark secret, but I wasn't expecting feelings like this straight from the get-go. She's an overachiever, a perfectionist, and a highly ambitious person, which I can certainly relate to. With those characteristics comes sarcasm, impatience, burnout, and the resistance to rest, which ALTA embodies as well as myself. When rest comes, so does the guilt of not being productive. It goes without saying that most people flock to cozy games in order to escape their stressful lives and all over worries for the safety of a carefree existence in the digital space. Any of my fellow burnt out millennials craving that Stardew lifestyle in the woods? I think ALTA represents the typical burnt out worker who thrives on the grind whilst also trying to escape their dark thoughts, secrets and responsibilities for something at a slower pace. Except she's one of those chronic workaholics unable to take things slow. Sound like someone you know? I could also get into the fact that she's likely struggling with some mental health issues, but with it being a game created by the makers of Stanley Parable, I wouldn't put it past them. Speaking of the Stanley Parable, I think the success of that game truly helps Wanderstop stand out as a reputable and somewhat unique title in the gaming space. Yes, it's got the elements of a cozy game, but its writing and dialogue felt like a real conversation. With the initial decision making in the woods about whether or not you should rest or keep going, really felt like a day-to-day struggle of, nope, just one more hour of work, and the constant battle of, I can rest when I'm dead mentality. I felt like ALTA was certainly one of the most real characters I've played in a long time, where she wouldn't subscribe to the slow living mentality of her surroundings. It's almost like some sort of strange multiverse situation where Lara Croft decides to move to Pelican Town and stop tomb raiding altogether. If we circle back to some of the characters I met in the tea shop, I personally want to focus on my favourite, which is the Dad Knight. In my initial playthrough, I went down this semi-sarcastic route of begging to see more photos of him and his son. With each photo, they became more chaotic and elaborate than the last, starting with a simple photo of the two of them wearing a cheese t-shirt, to then him holding a sweater with his dad's face on it, and last of all, photos of his dad taking selfies of them at 4 a.m. As crazy as he is, Gerald, my darling, his son is his pride and joy and just loves him, which is why I'll warn you, as a spoiler, towards the end of the playthrough, it almost broke my heart. This goofy character slowly became almost despondent and unresponsive from the clueless knight I met at the start of the game. But before we discuss any more about the heartbreak and drama, I think I'll sprinkle a little bit of the overall aesthetics of the game and why I think it works so well. I mentioned earlier in my review that the player is settled into a false sense of security. As a whole, Wanderstop is colourful, cartoony, and characters' movements are indeed incredibly animated. The quirky and traditional designs feel almost reminiscent of the first Shrek film, which keeps its roots in something fantastical with somewhat dark undertones. Fitting, if you ask me. I was surprised by the combination of traditional art in the intro of the game, as it sets the scene and explains the downfall of ALTA's flourishing career and struggles throughout the Dark Forests. I guess, almost like the stark difference between Dorothy in the real world and her first steps into the Land of Oz. Look, I'm a huge fan of bright and colourful games, especially those of the animated variety, but in a game like this, the flashes of traditional animation and the cozy style aesthetics are a perfect combination to showcase that not everything is as it seems, even in this so-called safe little bubble in the forest. It's almost as if everything outside Wanderstop is reality and this cozy little tea shop is the dream world, a fantasy. But here's the twist. It's not much of a spoiler as it's in the trailer, but there are a few extra bits from my playthrough which aren't included in anything announced so far. I'm also going to include some theories I may have in regards to ALTA's story post this build of the game, so you have been warned. One hook of the game is that everything is not what it seems. In the trailer, you're introduced to ALTA and all the tea-making jobs she does throughout the game, which then ends with her with conflicting thoughts of whether being at Wanderstop and resting is such a good idea for her. Through my playthrough, the sense of unease was prevalent for me. The tea shop felt like it was inside some sort of protective bubble from the dangers of the outside world, almost like a bell jar in a sense. As I mentioned earlier in my review, you run the shop as part of a never-ending day with no darkness or nighttime in sight. If we circle back to the night once more, you quickly realise that this isn't really some sort of safe space after all. Every time you see him, he's convinced it's been days since meeting, and he eventually returns with a curse, which can initially be brushed off as something for comical value. It isn't until you realise, before it's too late though. You soon discover that both visitors, the knight and the demon hunter, become unresponsive, forgetful, and eventually become a shell of themselves. This is where my crazy theory comes in, which I believe I'm entitled to poke fun of as soon as the game is fully released and it turns out I'm entirely wrong. Let's all laugh with future Mai together. So here goes. My main theory is either ALTA is the big bad or most likely Boru is. Yes, I'm super cynical, but there is no way someone can be that nice and be strong enough to carry the sword. It's likely that it's not that deep though, but who knows. I lightly touched on it, but I also feel like ALTA may be here at Wanderstop against her own will, whether she realises or not. In combination with the goddess statue, the two rituals the demon hunter encourages you to do in order to know each other better and to be indoctrinated into the community, and of course the reveal at the end of the playthrough where nobody knows what the heck is going on, I think Wanderstop is cursed in some way. Maybe travellers are drawn here with the promise of rest in a grove where the sun never sets and no one ever sleeps, only to forget who they are. Or better yet, it's the afterlife, or some sort of limbo because ALTA's been killed too many times. I could go on and on about my theories, which I will no doubt continue to have until I finally get hold of the full release on March 11th. I've been wanting this game since I saw the first trailer, and there's no way in hell I'm backing out now. So, my overall thoughts? Based on my initial 2-hour playthrough alone, I am overly impressed with the work put into a short playtime. I knew from the trailer that this was going to be something special, and with each minute I became more intrigued about what the complete package has to offer. Saying that, I did have a couple of minor issues to begin with, like trying to get my controller to work properly, which it did in the end, having difficulty selecting anything in the main menu, and just me being a complete and utter dum-dum with not following instructions, so some of the simple tutorials took me far longer than expected. Something I suspect will be rectified in the full release and first patch. Some features were easily accessible as well and simple to navigate, such as the game's photo mode, and the little pufflins delivering dropped items straight to you. From an accessibility point of view, the game allows those who are colorblind or dyslexic to adjust the settings accordingly to make for a more comfortable gaming experience. I'm unaware if there's due to be any combat in the full release, but I imagine if there is, the game would hopefully have some sort of accessibility feature related to that also, much like Cult of the Lamb. Above all, what I am incredibly enthusiastic about is the music. As I wrote this review, the menu music helped me stay in a mode of flow in order to complete this draft in one sitting. Something which is quite a feat for me, considering I've been suffering with not only writer's block, but imposter syndrome lately. With each note in the menu and in-game, I was able to shut my mind, silence the thoughts, and just get on with it. I would simply sip on my matcha latte, nibble at my lunch, and type whilst the sign swayed or pufflins waddled or flew across my screen. I'm a huge lover of video game music, and when it's done right, I can appreciate it more than just the typically generic library musics used in some titles. I also felt an overall connection with this game and the main character, which is a rare thing for me these days. I took the time actually reading the dialogue and invested myself in the world and cared about what she had to say. It's the first game in a long time where a game has had such an emotional impact on me in regards to the character development. So much that I cried as soon as ALTA gave in to rest. I don't know if it's because I've been burnt out or exhausted the last few years, the last few months especially, God, 2025, but something about her truly resonated with me. I find it so difficult to slow down without thinking about what I could be doing with my time and how I could be productive. And this was just a snippet of what's to come. If you haven't done so already, I highly recommend you wishlist this game and certainly try out the Steam demo when it's released. You'll be thoroughly delighted and surprised with what you'll find. Thanks again for taking the time to hear my thoughts on Wanderstop. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel for more honest reviews and lovely content such as this. Let us know in the comments below if you'll be playing Wanderstop and what crazy theories you have for the game when it's out. As always, your support means the world to me. Thank you so much for watching and have a good one. Bye!